Hello and good evening, Chicago. Welcome back into another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio. So much to do, so much to talk about in the best sports city in the U.S. in my not so humble, very biased opinion, but who cares about those kinds of things, right? We got a lot to talk about tonight. We are going to be breaking down some more in-depth on the White Sox news that happened last week. You may have remembered that I talked about it a little bit right as the Luis Robert news broke, so I promised you we would go more into that. Tonight is the night for that. We're also going to be talking a little bit more about Justin Fields and his coming to the Bears and just how much had to go exactly the Bears' way in order to land who we all hope is their quarterback of the future and for the next decade plus, and we will go into that. But first, before we go any further, the WNBA season is just around the corner. The Chicago Sky tip off to start the 2021 season officially this weekend, and we are going to be taking a look at what will be happening with the Sky this season, and we have got some help to do that along the way. Annie Costabile of the Chicago Sun-Times is going to be joining us to give us a breakdown and a look at just what might we expect from the Sky this season. They, of course, have all kinds of big new additions to the team. All that and more coming up for the next hour. Everybody buckle up. Let's have some fun. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight here on Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Before we go any further, of course, we have to acknowledge our sponsors. Legacy Financial. Last year was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment and you need some help, or if you're doing well and you want to get to the next level, either way, give them a call. Also, if you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn more money part-time, give them a call. You can call AO at 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. Andrew and AO are just two people on a mission to help families build a legacy. You can find them on Twitter at legacy_uncut, Instagram at sims_uncut, or on Facebook by searching Legacy Financial. And the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. Follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, find them on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, or search them on Facebook at Southern California Warriors. And then, without any further ado, we have a guest tonight to help us break down the upcoming Chicago Sky season. Annie Costabile writes for the Chicago Sun-Times, covering the Chicago Sky and also the Chicago Red Stars. You can follow her on Twitter at Annie Costabile. She also does a podcast for the Sun-Times called Equal Play, featuring women in sports, whether they be athletes or coaches or in the front office, and we will be talking about that as well. So, Annie, welcome onto the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for answering my email when I reached out. This is going to be excellent. It's always better to have somebody who covers the teams on a daily basis to jump in and help us out with teams. So, of course, the Chicago Sky this season, you can't talk about them without talking about Candace Parker. How has she looked? How has the team responded to her being there? Tell us about Candace.
Well, we unfortunately have obviously not been able to see practice live because of COVID and obviously how the league is continuing to handle the pandemic and heading into this season, there has been a limitation on media attendance in person. So we have not been able to see the team practice live, but I can speak to what the players have said about Candace's immediate impact. And that's just that she's had an immediate impact, like everything from energy level to obviously her unbelievable ability as a player. She, right away has brought a lot to this team. And so I think until we see them, actually play a game, which will take place on Saturday as their season opener against the Washington Mystics, it's hard to comment too much about what I've seen, but again, from what players have said, she's obviously had a huge impact right away.
And I know you got to speak a little bit to head coach James Wade about the upcoming season. Were you able to get any details or information from him about kind of the recruiting process for Candace? Did it take much to bring her back to Chicago, or was it more of, hey, we have Portillo's, we know you're from here, come on home?
No, you don't recruit a star like Candace Parker with Portillo's. I mean, I know she jokes that she loves Portillo's so much, but it certainly took more than Portillo's to bring Parker back to Chicago. And I had the privilege of speaking with her as well about this. And, it wasn't an easy decision for her to leave LA. She's been in LA almost as long as she, lived in Naperville and has called Naperville home. So this was not an easy decision by any means, and it definitely took a ton of effort from the Chicago Sky, from, the front office all the way down to, every single player on the team, helping in an effort to bring her home. So as far as James Wade's efforts in that, he was all in too, and it was kind of a balancing act on juggling realistically what the likelihood of her coming home was with, the hope that she would. So it was kind of a balancing act between, obviously wanting her to be here and understanding that there's a strong likelihood she may not leave LA.
Yeah. And obviously, this was a playoff team already a year ago, making it in the WNBA bubble and making it into the WNBA postseason. Does this move put them over the top? Should we be feeling championship or bust with this team now?
I mean, you could say championship or bust because of the fact that this roster has a strong likelihood of looking completely different next year due to player contracts. And so I think you're going to hear a lot of people say that, championship or bust, because of course with a roster like this, they have that potential to win. And anytime you have a team that has the potential to win a championship, I would say it's championship or bust. Like, no team that looks like this is going into the season, settling for runner-up. So, yeah, you're going to hear people say that. But to that point also, I think it's really, people need to understand everything that needs to go right in order to win a championship. It's not just about Candace Parker coming home. It's not just about having one of the best point guards in the league. It's not just about having stars in Kalia Copper and Diamond DeShields and, everyone else on this roster. It's a combination of that and a little bit of luck and a little bit of everything going right. So, health is a big factor too. So there's a lot that goes into winning a championship. And when you look at this roster, it's certainly a roster that screams championship contender.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kalia and Diamond. Who are some of the other important pieces that we should be looking at? Courtney Vandersloot is back at point guard after leading the WNBA in assists last year. Who are some of the other people that we need that are going to be helping out this roster get that championship?
Well, I talked to Wade today, and he, I think, summed it up perfectly. When you have a championship team, players 1 through 11 are important. There's no player that isn't important. When you're talking about, I guess, some of the more seasoned veterans, yes, of course, Courtney is a huge asset, and as Courtney goes, the team goes. That's been said on multiple occasions over the years. So of course, Courtney's value is indescribable. And then players like Kalia, players like Diamond add extreme value as well. And then you also have to talk about, players like Azurá Stevens, who at the moment is playing on a minute restriction, but her value on this team cannot go unnoticed. Stu Du. Everyone missays her name or mispronounces her name, and it's Stu Du. So just want to make sure everybody listening knows the correct pronunciation of her name. And then even rookie Shyla Heal. I mean, she's coming into a situation where she was drafted to be the backup point guard for Courtney Vandersloot to close that gap on the team's production when Courtney is off the floor. It drops insanely low when Courtney is off the floor. So Shyla Heal is also going to be a huge asset to this team this year. But I think, again, James summed it up perfectly in that when you have a championship contending team, any team for that matter, players 1 through 11 are important.
Yeah, and along that line with Shyla especially, I noticed that on their preseason game yesterday against Indiana that Candace Parker did not participate. Okay, that was somewhat expected. But then Vandersloot, Shyla Heal, and then Allie Quigley were all inactive. I remember reading in your preview piece you did earlier that there were some players that were having a hard time getting through all of the COVID protocols and travel protocols to get to the team. Is that still the case with those players, or were they just held out for health reasons yesterday?
Well, they weren't. It's not that they were having difficulties getting through the COVID-19 protocol. They were playing overseas. Allie and Courtney were. So was Ruthie. So was Stu. And Shyla obviously is from Australia. So they weren't having problems getting through the protocol. They just had to get back to Chicago to begin the protocol. So Courtney and Allie were late to return, obviously, because they were playing overseas, winning another championship. And Shyla did have some issues with her travel visa. It just was delayed in getting approved. So she is headed to the States, I believe, this week. Yes, I know she's headed to Chicago this week, and then she'll have to go through COVID protocol. And in order to be active with the team, you have to produce 6 negative COVID-19 tests before you can begin training with the team. So Courtney and Allie were inactive because they just weren't available yet. Allie began training with the team today, and Courtney is set to begin training with the team tomorrow.
6 negative tests. That is a lot of tests. Kudos to the WNBA for not taking this situation lightly. That is a lot of negative tests. So then for Shyla, then we should expect that it'll be probably then a couple of games before we really see her with the team.
Yeah, and that was, something that's been headlining news as of late with Gabby Williams' trade to Los Angeles was, Chicago's going to be limited in their roster at the beginning of the season because Shyla will be unavailable at the start of the season, and also because Azurá, is playing on a minute restriction. So they're coming into the season on Saturday with a small roster of 9 players available, and that's challenging.
You mentioned Gabby Williams, and I see One of my colleagues, Taryn Rodriguez, is in the chat. He is in the Southern California area. He is still very bitter about Candace Parker leaving to come back to Chicago. He says, take care of CP for us. Well, maybe this can help you feel a little bit better, Taryn. Annie, tell us a little bit about what happened with Gabby Williams yesterday in the trade, the Chicago Sky sending her to Los Angeles.
So Gabby is committed to play with the French national team for Eurobasket, which begins in June. I think June 17th is when the tournament kicks off, if I'm not mistaken. And so Wade came into the season knowing she was going to be unavailable during that period, and then also unavailable again during the Olympics, which there's the potential that other players on the roster could also be unavailable. And there's also an Olympic break, so these are all things to consider. But coming into the season, that was the expectation, that she was going to be unavailable playing with the French national team. And he just opened up about another layer to that, was that at the start of the season, she requested a trade, or before the season even began, in April, she requested a trade. And the challenge with that was, from Wade's perspective, was, placing her on this suspended list was to free up cap space, so that they could sign another player, so that they wouldn't be even more shorthanded. Because like I said earlier, they're already coming into the season shorthanded. So it really was not it wasn't any slight to Gabby. And obviously, there's layers to that, because being placed on the suspended list means you're not getting paid. So of course there's frustration in that. But from a general manager standpoint, it was a move that needed to be made in order to put the best team on the floor. And the trade to Los Angeles was her request. So, I think there are a lot of narratives online and on social media, and, I guess that's what social media is for. People can speak their mind and say whatever they want. But I'm always going to report on what I know, and what I know is that she requested a trade. What I know is that she was going to be largely unavailable this season until August. And what I know is that the Sky were already shorthanded coming into the 2021 season.
Yeah, I had seen they were preparing on only carrying 11 instead of an 11-person roster instead of a 12-person roster as a result of this. Will this allow the Sky to, once everyone's through their proper travel protocols and back from their various places playing basketball around the world, will they be able to have 12 women on the roster, or are they still going to be short one or two?
So the 11-player roster is not due to players overseas commitments or national team commitments. It's a cap space issue.
Thank you.
So,
my apologies. Yeah.
So when you have veteran players like Courtney, Allie, Candace, Stephanie, and Kalia Copper, whose salaries are six figures, it limits how many other players you can sign to a contract. So it's not an issue of players being unavailable because of national team commitments. It's cap space.
So will this free up enough cap space then to have every spot on the roster?
That was the point. So the point was to free up cap space so that they could sign 11 players. They're still only going to be able to carry 11 players. They won't be able to carry 12 players.
Okay. All right. So then what's going to be, as we look at this team, what's going to be the strength? Give me a strength of this team and then a potential weakness for this team?
I think I think a strength for this team is going to be, I mean, gosh, it's so hard. I'm like looking at the roster now and thinking about all the strengths. I think there's a strength this year is going to be their pick and roll play and their ability to space the floor. I think Candace Parker coming in is just going to create so many scoring opportunities from top to bottom because of her ability to pass the ball, see the floor. You know, she's a point forward. She's revolutionized the way that the 4-5 is played. So her coming into this position, she's going to take some of that responsibility off Courtney. She's going to free up Diamond and Kalia. Their offense in transition is going to be a sight to see. Excuse me for that lame line, but like, so I don't want to say like Candace Parker is the strength because again, this team is really, really special. But I think the way that they spread the floor, their pick and roll play, their offense in general is going to be, as it develops, is going to be, I think, their biggest strength. As far as weaknesses, I still think it's going to be developing the backup point guard. Shyla Heel has not been with the team, and although she's been a professional since she was, before she could even drive, she just hasn't been with this team yet. So getting her comfortable in the system, developing that chemistry is going to take a minute. And so I still think their biggest weakness is going to be what the team looks like when Courtney's off the floor.
Excellent. Yeah, so it'll definitely be things to keep an eye on. And then you also do a podcast for the Sun-Times, Equal Play, where you interview a woman from sports, either an athlete, a player, or a coach, or somebody in the front office, or sometimes somebody all three. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Equal Play, shout out to my girl Waverly McCarthy in Mississippi. She helped me come up with the name. And I really, when I started at the Sun-Times, wanted to start dialogue about women in sports. I don't even know if it was subconscious or consciously, I don't know. But I just remember thinking, like, I really want to create a podcast where we could just have conversations about the reality of so many different topics, like just honest, good conversation, real conversation that, inspires people or makes them feel less like an outsider or, helps them reach the, whatever it is, that next step in their career. A podcast that is almost like advice for people in sports and specifically women in sports. And so, when the pandemic hit, I think everyone's work schedule was drastically affected. And, I think about often how privileged I was and am that I did not lose my job during that period, because there have been so many people who've been really critically affected by this pandemic, and my thoughts and prayers are always with those people. And so I just thought this was the time to do it because I had extra time in my schedule. I wasn't, driving out to shoots all the time. I wasn't losing time in the car headed to games or just different situations. And so that's when Equal Play was born. And I will always just feature women that I'm inspired by, women that I am privileged enough to speak with and to interview, whose stories have inspired me. And so that was the thought process behind Equal Play.
Yeah, and you've got a broad range of women that you've talked to, from Sarah Spain, Justin Segal, hitting coach with the Cubs, and Katrina Adams was the most recent one that dropped. What is the process of selecting someone for the show, and do you have any favorites that you've done so far?
Gosh, the process for selecting a guest, there is no process. I mean, if you're a woman in sports, if you are changing the game in sports, there you go. And that could be changed from something like Nancy Lieberman, who was a woman who played in men's professional basketball leagues, to, some of my colleagues who are journalists who speak to the challenge of being the only woman in a locker room. It's big, and I don't even want to say it's big and small. It's every woman whose story has value, and every woman's story does have value. Every single woman's story has value. So there's no one that could not be a great person to have on this podcast. I guess the only thing is being a woman in sport. And so, I've tried to have a wide range of guests on the show because, again, someone who I might be inspired by or someone whose story might directly help me be a better reporter might not be the same person that inspires, someone who wants to play tennis. So I try and find and speak with women whose stories are much different than mine, because I think that's when we learn the most, is when we're having conversations with people who look nothing like us, who have experiences that are nothing like our own, who have dreams that are nothing like our own. It's just, those are the best conversations.
And they are important conversations to be had and to listen to. So thank you for doing it. I'm gonna steal a little bit from you right here. I've got one more question for you. Where do you see women's sports as a whole right now, and also in your field of journalism? How do you see that going for women right now?
Right now, I think we still have a long way to go. I think I always say this, but we won't be where we need to be until we're on the same playing field as men. And that, in my regard, when we're talking about media, that means, are we covering the women's teams the same way? Are we giving them the same amount of space in the paper, on broadcast? Are their games being broadcast as often as the men's games? Are they taking up primetime slots on national broadcast? All of these things are things that I think about. And until that is equal, then we aren't equal. Until that is equal, then we are all still fighting for an equal playing field. So, I don't know. I don't have a timeline on when we'll be there, but my hope and my dream and my personal goal is to one day be in a position where I get to decide, what the leading story is. I get to decide what gets the top slot on, a broadcast, let's say. So I think we need more women in those roles, because if we had more women in those roles, then it would look a little bit more equal, because the reality is, the same people have been deciding what get those top spots for a long time. And although their mindsets are changing and their mentality is changing, I think it's going to take women getting into those roles to change it quicker.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very, very much for joining us tonight, Annie. That is Annie Costabile. You can read her in the Sun-Times. You can follow her on Twitter, and you should definitely check out the podcast Equal Play. You can find it on Spotify. And where else can they find the podcast?
Anywhere you get your podcast, it could be listened to. So the easiest way I always say is just following me on Twitter, because I have the link in my bio. And once you click on that link, it then, can send you out. You could select which platform you prefer to listen to it on. So definitely check me out on Twitter at Annie Costabile, and also subscribe to the Sun-Times. All of my stories are there, and I work with so many incredible journalists that I just can't even say enough about. And every subscription matters. Every reader matters, and we value you so much, and we value your opinion so much. So please, if you can, subscribe to the Sun-Times. We love you all.
Absolutely. All right. That is Annie Costabile. Thank you so very, very, very much for joining us tonight. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, let's talk about the White Sox. Let's go a little bit more in depth on what happened last week. This is Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
Lopan, they didn't even want you. Heck, they didn't even want me. But you know what? Right about now, they have no choice. Looking for the real sports talk? Talk that's for us, the people? Look no further. The Wait a Minute Show, a prime time sports comedy cocktail that tucks you in at night. Join me and Lopan Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 2livestewsradio.com and Saturday 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Wait a Minute Show.com. Sounds like a plan to me. Ain't that right, Lopan?
Indeed.
Wrestling fans in the podcast world, you are in the right place to listen to the right show, the premier show in the professional wrestling podcasting world. This is Ring Rambling Radio, and you're listening to one of the co-hosts. I am Martin Sandoval, a.k.a. the SoCal Saint, along with my two co-hosts, the lovely Felicia and my boy Matt. Yes, every Saturday or every other Saturday morning, you can listen to us, the premier wrestling team, giving you the premier wrestling news, rumors, updates, event discussions, everything that has to do with professional wrestling. You're in the right place. IE Sports Radio presents Ring Rambling Radio. Don't miss it, because it's just too sweet.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. They're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. That was a fantastic preview that we just had of the upcoming Chicago Sky season. Hopefully we're going to see some good hoops coming out of Wintrust Arena this season. Again, you can catch the Sky season starts this Saturday against the Washington Mystics. All right, now let's talk about baseball a little bit. Let's go over to the South Side and the White Sox. Of course, there was the awful news that broke exactly a week ago about Luis Robert being out for effectively the rest of the regular season with a hip flexor injury that he sustained running down to first base. Fortunately, he does not require surgery, we have since learned in the past week. However, that doesn't change the timeline of you're still talking that 12 to 16 weeks without any baseball activity. And then, of course, a ramp-up period and coming back to the team. So you're talking, realistically, the tail end of the regular season, or maybe even wait until the postseason before you see one of the just great rising up-and-coming stars of the game, an all-around fantastic player, patrolling center field for you and just knocking the ball all around the park. And you add that on with the injury that, of course, happened to Eloy Jimenez at the start of the season, and Adam Engel in right field earlier, and the setbacks he's had, and you're looking at a roster that you thought was going to be able to just knock the ball all around the park and score at will, and now you're feeling like this is a roster that's going to have to play small ball. Now, you look at it, they still have the best run differential in I'm double checking it now that it is the entire league. Certainly in the American League, yes, in all of baseball, they still have the best run differential in all of baseball at a plus 53. The closest to them is the Boston Red Sox at a plus 36. But now you're going to be relying so much more heavily upon your pitching. It's working out because they've got the best starting ERA in the American League. They're still getting great pitching from guys like Dallas Keuchel and Lance Lynn, and of course you're having the reemergence of Carlos Rodon, and Michael Kopech is getting some spot starts in there from time to time. He's on an innings limit for the season, but it's not what you expected to see from the team. Now, of course, I say that, and over the weekend they swept the Kansas City Royals and put up 9 runs on 10 hits yesterday. They put up 9 runs on 12 hits on Saturday, and then they won in a little bit more conservative of a fashion, 3-0 on Friday, but still got 7 base hits. They're still having production offensively, but you're gonna need to see guys like Tim Anderson, like Jose Abreu, who's only hitting .209 right now. Yoan Moncada, who's only hitting .255. You're going to need to see those kinds of guys step up and kind of pick up some of the slack and start getting closer to their regular offensive numbers. Tim Anderson's doing great, hitting .295 on the season. Yermaine Mercedes, of course, has been the huge talk of the start of the season, just absolutely blasting the cover off of the ball and coming out of nowhere. An unbelievable .380 batting average, and I'm pulling up some of his, an OPS of 1,005. That's just absurd. On base plus slugging. Effectively, what that means is that he's getting a base for every single time he steps up to the plate. If he goes 1 for 4, that means he hit a home run. If he goes 1 for 3 with a walk, that means he hit a triple and drew a walk, and that got his 4 bases and 4 plate appearances. The major league average right now for OPS is somewhere down closer to like the 750 to 800 range. He's gonna come back down to earth. It's just a matter of when on Mercedes' part. So you need Abreu or Moncada or some of the other guys to really start picking up some of the offensive slack. Taryn comments in the chat that it seems like the White Sox are resilient despite everything. They are. I also wonder eventually the other shoe does have to drop. They are over. I mean, you're talking about two guys, especially in Robert and Jimenez, who are just absolute monsters and crush the baseball. So they're just not going to be able to score as many runs as consistently. Now the Royals are slumping a bit too. They hit the Royals at a great time. The Royals had just gotten waxed by the Twins in an earlier series, so they were struggling. If you want to know more about the Kansas City Royals, I suggest you check out the Kansas City Shuffle tomorrow evening. Dave and Pesquire and the guys do a great job breaking down all things Kansas City sports, so you can definitely hear more about the Royals there. But the long and the short of it is Kansas City, after getting off to a surprisingly hot start, they have dwindled a bit. They're now in third place in the division. They've dropped 9 out of their last 10. They're starting to look more like the back of their baseball card. So it was perfect timing for the White Sox. They were hitting the Royals at just the right time. Now they've got the Twins, who the Twins have not really been what's expected of them. So the division is still right there for the taking. So it's too early to call this a lost season, but they are going to have to kind of adjust on the fly. And one guy who definitely is going to have to adjust on the fly is manager Tony La Russa. We've talked about La Russa quite a bit since his surprise hire in the offseason. Unfortunately, I fear we're going to be talking about him a lot more throughout the summer because he keeps making boneheaded mistakes, from his lineup construction of not playing the young guys and sticking with the veterans. That's a very old school tactic. Playing guys like Billy Hamilton, who doesn't offer you a ton at the plate. His best days defensively are behind him. His true asset to the team is as a base runner. To constantly be trotting him out there and playing him in either left field or center field, instead of some of the younger guys, some of the younger hitters that you'd like to see, where you're looking at this roster and you're saying, we'd like to see some of the guys, since we're missing some, since we're missing some of our power hitters, maybe we could replace them with some younger, less proven power hitters and see what they can do. And instead, Tony just keeps trotting out, well, this guy's a veteran, therefore I'm going to play him. Or having a strategy of it's the ninth inning, there's 2 outs, the tying run is at the plate. I'm going to pinch hit with a guy that in his best day sprays the ball somewhere into the outfield and gets a single instead of, no, you need a home run right here. You've got some home run hitters on your bench. How about you turn to them and try to use them instead? And after in the postgame saying, oh, well, you wanted a single there. No, that's baseball strategy from 15, 20 years ago when pitchers weren't striking batters out at an absurd rate. There were over 1,000 strikeouts in April alone in MLB, and batting average is at its lowest across baseball as it's ever been. You're just not going to string multiple hits together against the high heater closers that baseball has today. So just not being in touch with a strategy, to then the huge gaffe from a week ago of in extra innings having his closer run the bases. Now I want to start the rule. I like the new rule of having a man start at second base in the 10th inning on. I know a lot of baseball purists don't like it. I like it. The worst thing you can have happen, and we saw it so often, where you'd have an extra innings game and suddenly the next thing you know, you've gone 14, 15, 16, 17 innings, and it's just, come on, you've wrecked your, first of all, the game then takes forever when that happens. You turn into a 4 or 5 or 6 hour long game. And then also you completely destroy your bullpen, and especially if that happens in the first game of a series, boy, you better hope that your starters for the next 2 days can go 7, 8, 9 innings for you, because your bullpen is shot. So I like starting with a man on second to begin the extra innings, because the game is going to end quicker. It's going to end after just 10 or 11 innings. And in the regular season, I like that. But I admit that it's a bit confusing, because the way it works is the man who made the last out the prior half inning starts on second. And so when Tony La Russa did a double switch in Cincinnati, that meant that his pitcher was now in that spot and was going to have to run the bases. Well, there's a rule they put in place that, oh, hey, if that's the pitcher, you don't have to run the pitcher. You can have it be the guy before him if you want it. That way you're not having your closer, who hasn't run the bases probably since he was in high school, out there trying to do something he hasn't done in close to 20 years and maybe getting hurt in the process and severely hurting your team. But there was La Russa not knowing the rules and also not surrounding himself with people that did know the rules and were willing to tell him that, hey, Tony, you don't have to do this. That's a problem. Tony La Russa's got to wake up. He's got to understand that even though, yes, he's already in the Hall of Fame, baseball is different now from when it was played 10 years ago, and he's got to adjust to the times, because right now he's actively hurting his team. And this is still a team that has championship aspirations. Maybe they have to be tempered a little bit for this season, but there's still plenty of room for this team and this roster to develop and grow, and I feel like La Russa is actively hampering them, and it's a problem. I hope he figures it out. I hope he wakes it up. I don't expect it, though. All right, we're going to take one more very quick break, and then when we come back, yeah, the Bears got Justin Fields. We're all still very excited and pumped about it. Just how in the heck did they land Justin Fields? Well, it was a twisted path that took to get it there. Let's unwind it a little bit. This is Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio. Back in just a minute.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Locke.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Before we wrap up tonight, I want to give one more shout out to our sponsors, Legacy Financial. Last year was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment and you need some help, or if you're doing well and you want to get to the next level, either way, give them a call. Also, if you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn more money part-time, give them a call. You can call AO at 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. Andrew and AO are just two people on a mission to help families build a legacy. Find them on Twitter at legacy_uncut, Instagram at sims_uncut, or on Facebook at Legacy Financial. And the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed, try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. Find them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, or on Facebook at Southern California Warriors. So the Bears got Justin Fields. I was excited. Bears fans are over the moon. Nobody saw this coming. And I had suspected that maybe it was a possibility, but to actually see it play out was just bizarre and crazy, and I can't remember anything quite like it in Chicago Bears history. Well, but look at just how crazy it was that Fields fell to them and all the different spots, the little twists and turns that could have resulted in him not coming to the Bears. The first pivotal spot in the first round was at number 8 with the Panthers. We figured the Panthers probably weren't going to take a quarterback because they had just traded for Sam Darnold. They went with a corner. Well, the corner they went with was J.C. Horn, and that was huge because that meant Patrick Surtain from Alabama was then still on the board. The Broncos reportedly were debating between Surtain and Justin Fields. So right there, if the Panthers go with the other corner, Surtain, Fields is probably off the board at 9 and the Bears don't see him. Instead, the Broncos go with Surtain, who they had graded just ever so slightly higher as a prospect. Well, that then meant the Cowboys at 10, well, they just lost their favorite guy. The Cowboys were in love with Patrick Surtain and so wanted to draft him. Then when he was off the board, the Cowboys were, well, let's move back. So they moved back a couple of spots, and the Philadelphia Eagles jumped up to number 10 and took Devonta Smith out of Alabama. Why was that important? Because that's who the Giants were looking at 11. The Giants were wanting to go with a wide receiver, and Devonta Smith was their guy. Dave Gettleman, the general manager for the Giants, was not a man known for trading back, but suddenly his top player was gone. He had been talking with Ryan Pace during the day about potentially moving up, and now suddenly that was a possibility about moving, and now suddenly that was a possibility. He gets on the phone with Pace, they finalize the deal, and now suddenly Justin Fields is the Bears. If one of those things goes differently, if J.C. Horn doesn't go to the Panthers, then Justin Fields probably isn't there. If the Broncos don't go with Patrick Surtain, then probably the Cowboys don't make that trade to move back with the Eagles, which means Devonta Smith is probably still there for the Giants to take, which means the Giants don't trade out of their spot, which means the Bears might not have gotten Justin Fields because the Vikings were lurking there at 14. They were looking at possibly moving up for Fields or just taking him if he fell to them at 14. Wild and crazy train of events that resulted in Justin Fields being there, but I am so glad that he did. I am pumped and excited to get to see what he can do with the Bears this upcoming season. All right, that does it for our show tonight. A huge shout out and thank you again to Annie Costabile of the Chicago Sun-Times for giving us that excellent Chicago Sky breakdown for their upcoming season. Definitely check out her work in the Sun-Times and check out that podcast she does, Equal Play. It is excellent and well worth your time to listen. Thank you to our sponsors, Legacy Financial and the Southern California Warriors, for continuing to support IE Sports Radio. It is much appreciated. It helps us keep the lights on and helps us just allow to keep doing these fun shows that we do. I am it tonight for IE Sports Radio. Taryn Rodriguez did Set Point earlier today, so you can go back and listen to that as a podcast. Also, check out all the other fantastic shows that are going to be going on this week. The Show That Never Sleeps on Wednesday. Harrison and Pierre talking about things in New York sports. You can check out Andrew Hagenbaugh on Friday talking about the state of Ohio. Things going on there. I mentioned the Kansas City Shuffle. Check them out. Thank you to all those guys for what they do. Thank you to Karen for hanging out in the chat. Thank you for continuing to come in and listen to me every week. I really, really, really appreciate it. Guys, this has been a ton of fun. I have learned a lot. I hope you have picked up a thing or two along the way. let's do this all again next week. Until then, be good, be safe, keep taking your vaccines, keep listening to doctors, all those good things. Until next week, we'll see you then.